Okay, we are live. So we are going to talk today about how to become a supremely confident decision maker. And as I put in the show notes, I think the way that we will approach this is really in an unconventional way, right? It's kind of the foundation, as I believe, and I think as David's experienced, is that your identity really is what informs, right? The beliefs you have about yourself, the things, how secure you feel and who you are, all these things, right, really help to inform how you respond to your day-to-day, the challenges you face, the commitments you need to make, the goals you set. And so when you've got a really strong, secure foundation of identity, that is the absolute key to becoming a supremely confident decision maker. And as we will cover, I believe there are three critical areas of self-awareness, right? So it doesn't take, 15 different things. These three areas, as simple as A plus B plus C, that when you get really clear on these three areas, your identity becomes so strong and secure. You'll know exactly who you are, who you desire to be. It's really amazing. And we also will cover in this conversation, which we plan and intend to cover in about 25 minutes. So we're going to pack a lot of practical information, and we'd love if anybody has questions or feedback. We will certainly love to address that. But the three biggest obstacles that I believe tend to get people off track in decision making, right? These are the challenges that win. So I might as well just cover really quickly, right? How you deal with emotions. So in the moment, someone says something, it hurts your feelings, it upsets you, makes you angry, makes you feel insecure, whatever it might be. How are you able to deal with that in real time, in the moment, and not let that then dictate, right, the decision that you make? And that's a tough one, but we're gonna cover that.
Yeah.
How you deal with self-doubt, right? When you start to second guess yourself and you get kind of start overthinking, overanalyzing, how can you deal with that in real time to become a supremely confident decision maker? And how do you deal with social pressure, right? So when you want to make a decision, but you don't also want to disappoint someone, and so you feel that the power of your environment kind of putting that pressure on you, how do you make a decision that really reflects who you are, what's important to you, even knowing that may not be consistent with what somebody else wants, or you feel like, well, this so-and-so may not, agree with that decision. How do you overcome that to make supremely confident decision-making? So Mr. David Osk, how are you doing today?
Man, I just love talking about this kind of stuff. And I, over the last couple of years, I've been really doing a lot of deep work in this area. And honestly, thanks to you and, kind of your course and protocol and so on, been able to put a bit more a systematic approach to, just seeing how I kind of live, right? Notice myself, really build that self-awareness and so on. And I can't help but, think this whole idea of decision making. I mean, it's kind of everything, right? Because the rest of this day is built on the decisions I made this morning. The decisions I make today are going to affect tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, and so on, right? So I feel like if I can build a foundation where I'm making, the right decision, first, most of the time, we're humans, so we're going to paint some, a picture that's just, not realistic. But if I'm making decisions that are just better and better, and they kind of progressively get better, well, what happens? My life gets better, most of the time. The wind blows sometimes, right? But at the same time, I love this idea of starting from the foundation and building from there. So, I mean, you mentioned the first, but I think I wrote this down: emotions, self-doubt, and, social pressure. Well, of course, emotions. I'm a really emotional guy.
Yeah,
and
me too.
The old pendulum can swing wide. So yeah, I'd love to just kind of dig into that first one. What are your thoughts on just the emotional framework around decision making?
Yeah. So, part of the reason why I even use the terminology foundation is because when you have a solid base, right, you have a secure sense of who you are. So you already are starting off with, I don't know if you want to call it advantage, but right. So when someone comes and makes a critical comment, they make a judge, or you get a setback, right? You experience failure, rejection, whatever it might be. If you aren't firmly kind of planted, right? If you don't have a strong foundation under you, then those types of things can completely knock you off your base, right? And get you untethered. And next thing you know, you're making decisions that are wildly inconsistent with, what matters to you, what's important to you, who you desire to be. So I think that's why it's important to do the pre-work. We talk about the
Yeah.
setting identity and doing this work is really the pre-work that allows you to do all the other stuff, that's necessary to have a great marriage, to be successful in business. You're kind of pre-committing, right? You're saying, I know who I am, so I'm entering into this interaction already, right, with a clear sense, as opposed to the alternative is if I have uncertainty heading into this about who I am, right, then oftentimes I'm looking to my environment. There's so much ambiguity within that interaction, and so I'm kind of looking for their reaction, right? Do you like me? Am I acceptable? Am I good enough? Right? All these things. I'm allowing my environment to put a lot more pressure on me in those moments. So that's the pre-work to answering the question on emotions. But the second thing is, so if I think I've given this example before, but I'll use it again. Not so long ago, I was in a car ride with my wife, and she made a comment. It was like a 45-minute car drive we're going to be on, and she said something that hurt my feelings. As you pointed out, I've learned to embrace. I'm a sensitive person, and I see that really as a gift now, right? I see that, but historically, not always the case. I would be really judgmental towards myself on that.
I get it.
So my wife says this, and my initial response to her saying this, right, was, well, because she said that, now I'm going to emotionally shut down, and I'm going to punish her. And it's a little embarrassing, right, even saying that, but it was, and it felt like in that moment, like natural law. It genuinely felt like that's like, of course, the just reaction to what she did. And, there's nothing else I could possibly do. Fortunately, because I had done the pre-work, I was able to quickly catch myself and recognize, hey, you might have hurt feelings right now, but that's not how you want to treat your wife, right? That's not consistent with what you've written out as the type of husband you want to be. This isn't the type of car ride that I want to have. So I was able to acknowledge the feeling, right, quickly, and say, hey, so you feel a little hurt, accept it, don't resist it, but then lean into my values, right? How do I lean into my values and quickly make a decision? One of my values is having fun. So I was able to make a humorous gesture towards my wife in that moment, and she laughed, and it broke the ice, right? There was this really strong sense of tension in that moment.
Yeah.
And so it was a decision, right? It was one of those things where before, when my feelings were hurt, I felt locked into a certain decision that was, going to just compound the conflict. It was going to make it worse. And now we're on a ride where we're heading in this direction, way off course. But because of the sense of having a strong base of identity, right, I was able to recognize, well, wait a minute, there is another option here, right? And here's the more authentic option. And so I was able to lean into that as a decision. But it does require, I believe, some acknowledgement of the feeling, right? You have to acknowledge the feeling. You have to accept it. If you try and wish it away, avoid it, all those things, all it does is amplify the feeling. It becomes stronger, and now it becomes even more difficult. So, and then I think the third part to become more agile emotionally in those moments is to then lean into your values, lean into something that you know to be rock solid and stable for you, and help that to inform your decision making. What do you think about that?
Oh man, it's interesting because I think about one of my core values. Well, actually, I'll put it this way. One of the things that I've developed in the last few years is, this idea of trusting myself. Well, one thing that I really try to do, most of the time is to, trust other people around me, give them the benefit of the doubt. So when you mentioned, the car ride with your wife there and so on. Well, Lisa and I have been married 22 years. We've had how many car rides have we had, right? Where we get our feathers ruffled and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So what's fascinating is especially in the last few years, I've learned to trust myself, meaning I know who I'm trusting, what I'm trusting. I have a vocabulary to describe those things that are rising to the surface on how I handle conflict, because it's not a matter of if, but when it's coming. But here's something else as you were talking, and I kind of thought about this really for the first time, is I trust her. I don't expect her to be perfect. But at the same time, I'm like, man, I want to always give her the benefit of the doubt and understand she's human too. Sometimes she says stuff, because she didn't sleep well the night before, right? That kind of thing.
Yep.
And what's fascinating is some of the conversations that in our, especially early in our marriage, that go from a 3 to a 10 about something really dumb, right? Now, a 3 remains a 3. And we're both able to look at each other and be like, yeah, that's kind of a funny thing. It's amazing how we're kind of getting worked up about something that really is irrelevant. But what's solving that problem is I'm not as defensive anymore. I know exactly who I am, you know, what I'm going to say yes to and no to. I like the exploration of growth, so I'm not as easily offended. I trust myself. I trust her. It's like it's kind of just decompressed um, some of the uncertainty or ambiguity around who, you know, everything for that matter, where I would kind of get my feathers ruffled, you know, more in a hurry. So this idea of self-trust and knowing what I'm kind of standing on, that feels great. But I'm also, you know, on those that I love, right, that I've spent a lot of time with, I'm trusting them. They're good people. I've chosen them. They've chosen me. And I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it reminds me like the idea of, you know, acknowledging that you're safe, right? I
Yeah.
mean, in some regards, right? And it's amazing. And I feel safe, whether it's my external environment, right? I'm in a place, this is my wife, this is someone I love, someone I care about, I know she cares about me, right? My friends. But I also think that, you know, to go back, I think there's the internal environment. The more I feel like I am safe within myself, it's amazing how that helps me then to just have better decisions, right? To react to things better. I can admit there's times in my own head where my head is like a war zone, right? Where it's like,
Yeah.
it's not a safe place. You know, I'm attacking myself. I'm overthinking things. I'm being super critical. And when I'm in that space, you know, simple decision. I remember, you know, the simple decision like coming home at the end of the day, my wife saying, "So how was your day?" You know, it felt like an attack. I was like, "Why are you attacking me?" Right? Like, you know,
Yeah.
are you saying I didn't do enough today? You know, and it had nothing to do at all with her. That's a super, you know, innocuous question. But because internally I did not feel secure, I did not feel safe, right? I was reacting out of that. And I don't think people realize, as you were saying, you know, sometimes Lisa maybe didn't sleep well, and that's why, you know, something. But you know, I love in the book, The Four Agreements, one of the tenets of how to live a great life and be successful is to never take things personally, like ever. And I think that's much easier said than done, right? And there's probably some argument for saying, well, maybe there are times when we should, you know, kind of, but I think by and large, that's phenomenal advice. And the more I recognize that people's responses and their reactions to me often has very little to do with me, right? Like
Yeah.
it often has a lot more to do with what's going on with them. It's amazing how that really is liberating, I think, in some regards. So
And what's neat is you know, so how does this then play into the decision making in the moment of a conflict and so on? You know, we always think, okay, I can't control people and things around me. I
yep,
can control what's going on in here, though.
yeah, well
You know what I mean?
said.
I have a decision to make on how I'm going to let the best in me rise to the top to handle whatever, you know, conflict or fragmentation in your thinking or just, you know, chaos, whatever that looks like. And it's amazing now that I know, you know, who that is, right? That I want to rise to the top when I kind of course correct, as we often talk about. It's amazing how, you know, core values and different things like that oftentimes take that emotion, you know, from a 10, you know, just almost immediately down to a 3. It's like, oh, all right, here we go. You know,
Yeah,
we're standing on some bedrock again, because it's, you know, every day we're course correcting all day long, and you know, we just have to get used to it. But if we don't know, you know, who and what we're course correcting to, good luck.
yeah, it's amazing. You know, there how often I hear and see in my work, you know, that people will justify making decisions based off of their intentions, right? So, you know, yes, I said something that was inconsiderate. Yes, I didn't, you know, respond to my boss or a coworker or something like that, right? In an
Yeah.
ideal way. But, you know, they didn't understand my intentions were good. Something along those, right? Maybe it's not the perfect description of that,
Yeah.
um, but our intentions really aren't that important, right? Like what really matters is the real world impact that we have on people. And we actually have something called a psychological immune system that is can really work to our detriment. And it's this idea, right? The psychological immune system that we aren't going to feel awful about ourselves all the time. So, you know, when we tend to see that we are well intentioned. We know that Al Capone, for instance, right? Some of his writings, he
Yeah.
actually saw himself in his own like worldview. He saw that he was misunderstood and believed he was doing things for the right reasons, right?
Oh,
And
wow.
there's other people who would generally be considered pretty bad people, right? Who in their mind thought they were doing it for the right reasons. And so it's amazing how you know, how dangerous that can be in some regards, you know, getting caught in this idea. But yeah, but I was, you know, I wasn't available for my wife, for my kids. I didn't, you know, do this ethical thing for my business, but I did it for the right reasons. And that's why it's so important, right? To really be tethered to a set of values and principles that really guide your decisions in that. So does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It changes everything. Yeah. And especially, of course, when it's our values, it's not what somebody else told us. It's when you have chosen those things on your own accord, the sense of autonomy and agency and so on, that sense of choice and trust and bedrock is just, oh my goodness. I think about where I was, earlier in my life to where I'm at now. I mean, here's what's interesting. There's a lot of things out there that are good, right? But we're all different. And in that scale of priority, what's on the top for me is different from what's on the top for you. And when I act in alignment with, what's truer to me, it's amazing how much easier, because it's true to my nature, those things, those decisions become. But if I don't know what they are, I'm looking around trying to find some tools in my belt, if you will, and they're not there. I mean, I can't grab onto them. Yeah. So yeah, that's great. I'll segue into this next one here, kind of as we're going, the self-doubt. So tell me about that. What are your thoughts on self-doubt and how it plays into decision making?
Yeah, so I think the internal dialogue, right, and the questioning ourselves, overthinking. I think the three filters that we use, right, in order to really create rock solid, secure, authentic identity. So knowing your values, but you got to take those values and you got to have mechanisms for how they become daily filters, right? So how am I applying these daily, the decisions I'm making, the goals I'm choosing, all those things, right? They become so internalized that your values simply define, right, essentially who you are.
Yeah.
So the second one is understanding what's driving your behavior, right? There's motivations. Yeah. And there there's motivation that is intrinsically, so it's driven by autonomy, it's driven by competence and purpose. Right. And it's really the purest form of motivation. It's clean, it's healthy, it's invigorating, it's where we do our best work, it's where we're going to get our absolute best results. There's no doubt about it, right? We can be really, really successful and effective being extrinsically motivated, but it tends to leave a lot of damage in the process, right? It's not sustainable. There's I could get into the research on that. I won't for the sake of time right now. But the more that we can do things through the lens of intrinsic motivation, we're just going to eliminate self-doubt and we're going to intuitively start to trust ourselves to make better and better decisions, right? And the third one is knowing your unique strengths and understanding very clearly how you want to apply them at work, at home, right? To have the impact that you want to have. So when you've done the pre-work, right, and you've defined these things in advance, it's amazing how in the moments where in the past self-doubt would kick in and now I would be paralyzed, right? The decision-making, I am the perfectionist. I think there was a book I read one time that talked about two different decision-making styles. It was the maximizer and the satisficer. So the maximizer wants to know every possible option and wants to make the absolute perfect best choice, right? The satisficer just has a certain criteria in place and wants to say, and once that criteria is met, make a decision and move forward. Right. And there might be times where you decide I need to make the best decision. But by and large, the maximizer is going to be way more stressed. They're going to be paralyzed by decisions. They're going to have a tough time. Right. And decision making becomes this kind of really stressful, almost crippling experience. Yeah, I say that out of very personal experience. That's what I mean in simple decisions. Right. Where do you want to go for dinner tonight? Oh, let me go on Yelp. And next thing I know, I'm on page 17 of Yelp. Right. Trying to figure out, what's the absolute best restaurant.
Yeah.
But the more that I really did the work to develop those, three areas, it was easier for me to become a satisficer where I just had an internal set of criteria. I had an internal set of standards that I could apply that empowered me to make quick, easy, decisions that I constantly feel great about. I've never made a decision that hit those three filters that I've then returned and said, man, that was a bad decision. It's pretty much always a great decision. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I when I think about the idea of having impact, it's funny because, even in our family, just, this little micro level here, I have certain strengths, right? And the way that I operate, Lisa has hers. She's more pragmatic, practical, let's take care of tasks, kind of stuff. And, and I'm more of the, hey, if somebody's feeling down, they're coming to, old aspiration here, right? Parker and Kate, it's, Lisa will even text me, hey, Parker could use a talk. So I'll be sitting here in my office, and he comes up, and what's so neat though is they're 14 and 16. And not that Lisa doesn't give encouragement and that kind of stuff, but I just do it in a different way. And I think I connect with them on a level that's just, more unique. And what's fascinating though is when they come to me, it feels very intrinsic to me, right? Internal. And therefore what happens? My joy rises. Like it's so neat to see them plop down and, I'm like, hey, what's going on? What do you need? And I just love the fact though that I'm the go-to. But what's interesting about that is and you've talked about this so much, you're finding that sweet spot in yourself when your energy rises, when you feel you feel that sense of, oh man, this is me. I'm acting in that's alignment with the best part of me, and it just makes you want to do more of it. Yeah. So the impact, the strengths and impact thing, they're so tied together. And you found it when you just want to do more of that. And of course, I try to do that with everybody that I come in contact with, but of course with my kids, right? I just love them, and I want to be a great dad, and I want to interact with them in a way that is unique to me, and not just this arbitrary, hey, be a good dad. No, I want to be me in being their dad. They don't need just a good dad. They need me, the fullest version of me. And it feels darn good, honestly. I like being me with my kids.
Yeah, we get right internal clues to when we are on track. There's it's a visual that I've posted a few times where it has like these a Venn diagram, right? It's got who I am and then what I do, right? And when who I am and what I do are aligned, right? That's authenticity. Yeah. And when who I am and what I do though are misaligned, it creates an inauthenticity gap. Yeah. Right. And the thing is that we feel it, right? We feel it in our conscience. We feel guilt. We feel more stress, anxiety, dissatisfaction, all those things. And ideally, those should be internal signals that say, hey, this gap between who you are and what you're doing, they're misaligned. You need to course correct. You need to, but we often just, we ignore those signals, right? We self-medicate them. We distract ourselves. We do a variety of things that, we have this on board, this internal system that's amazing, right? It is really good at telling us when we are on track, right? And so
it's amazing. Because you've been a part of it. The last 3 weeks of my life have been, off the chain busy. Like I'm somebody who sleeps, 7.5, 8 hours a night. And if I don't get that, I'm not doing well. But what's fascinating is I feel like I've been operating in my highest good, right? I like that, is it Latin or Greek term, the summum bonum, the highest good. Like I've been operating in that area for the last 3 weeks. It's been exhausting, but here's what's fascinating. There were 3 or 4 nights in a row where I had, 4 or 5 hours of sleep, but I still felt like I was tracking pretty well. And I didn't feel tired. So my point is when you've got the, here I am, and here's what I do. When there's that gap, I literally physically feel tired, and it doesn't matter if I'm getting 8 hours of sleep. Yeah. So the fact that there's a clue there, when those things kind of align, I can literally, my body needs less sleep. It's fascinating when you find that, and what a wonderful clue. It's like, you mean to tell me I slept 5 hours last night and I don't care and I feel great? It's kind of fascinating how it affects us, on a very physical level.
Yeah, I totally agree. To segue, the third obstacle, right? So, and this is one I see a lot, where people get caught in this trap of, there's a decision that I want to make. Maybe there's something that I've been struggling with, and I know I need to speak up about it because, I want it to change, but I can't do it because the other person isn't going to like it, right? They're going to be upset by it, or they'll never change. So their decision is based upon, right, not whether or not it's the right thing for them to do, but it's based upon the external response it's going to get. Yeah. And that really, it removes autonomy, right? At that point, you are not acting out of agency or autonomy. You're not operating out of authenticity. And I get, right? I get the idea of, well, what's the point of saying something to, an employee, to a boss, right? If they're just going to dismiss it. But the
Right.
thing is, the basis really should be, is it the right thing for me to do? The more that you stifle that and the
Yeah.
more that you just continue to stay silent and not take action on that, you will lose it. Will start to demotivate. Your brain will shut down the motivation to the brain. You'll become apathetic and you'll start to develop something called learned helplessness. And
Mm.
I promise you that is not good. So,
Mm.
the ability to understand what is the right thing for you to do, run it through your filters, right? So sometimes, you can get caught up in the moment and choose to say and speak something, right? But if you run it through the three filters, again, I don't see how you can make a bad decision when you are running it through those three filters and it clearly hits all three check boxes.
Yeah.
But
I don't.
what do you have to say about this idea? Social pressure, maybe guilt sometimes, right? That people, I know you get asked all the time to do, events to people. You get hit up a lot because you are such a helper, right? You are so amazing with people. How do you deal with that, knowing what to say yes to, and how do you deal with the pressure sometimes of feeling confident and saying yes or no to the right things?
Yeah, and so here, that's a I could talk about that for a long time, and I think the turning point for me in understanding, you know, well, even this idea of boundaries, like is it okay to have, to say no to something and disappoint somebody else? It's only okay if I feel okay. Meaning, you know what I mean? I don't necessarily care about this transaction, you know, but if I say yes or no and I still don't feel okay, there's something going on there.
Yeah.
So what's fascinating is the more that I've become a better decision maker as a result of knowing, well in advance of an obstacle or an opportunity, because I know exactly who I am, the things I like saying yes to and no to, all that kind of stuff, right? I'm it's like the social pressure just takes its rightful place. It's not to say that it's not there. I mean, that's not realistic. But at the same time, what's fascinating is I can look at someone and say, "Man, thank you so much for asking me to do that." Yeah, I don't have the margin right now in my life, and I mean, to honor them, to speak to them very intelligently and clearly, and yeah, I'm just not able to say yes to that right now. Maybe hit me up in the spring or whatever that is. I get asked to sing different places and things like that, and I've turned down a lot of that lately, just because it just isn't aligned with what my clear yes is. My decision of yes is so clear right now. And um, but again, I wouldn't have been able to have that clarity and that sense of peace around that if I hadn't done, is it, what do you say, the pre work, or
Called the inner size or the pre-work, right?
I love inner size. I forgot about that. And it's yeah, exercise or inner size. I love that. But what's fascinating is now I know exactly the stuff that is a high priority to me. And when I act in alignment with those things and do those activities and all that kind of stuff, man, I feel great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel purpose driven. I feel like I'm using the highest things in my life to have the impact that I want to have. And by the way, I think it probably needs to be said too that, as far as making decisions, of course, it's to have a desired outcome. And you would always say too that would have to be a virtuous outcome.
Yeah.
Or it's really not a foundation for life. We are not that we need to be Superman and be everything to everybody and all that kind of stuff. But what's fascinating is when I understand who I am, what motivates me, the things that I'm drawing from, right? That well inside of me that I'm drawing from every single day, and the desired outcome that I have, it kind of has to look like something. So
Yeah.
meaning, it's gonna look like something, but when it looks like something where I see an impact of good, well, then what happens, right? Then it energizes that loop again that you talk about, that virtuous loop where we head back to the beginning, the bedrock, because it felt
Yeah.
so stinking good to be me. Now I'm going to go back to the beginning and start that process all over. And yeah, so I think, but again, back to the social pressure in your question, very real. We have to acknowledge that. And but again, what is it that stops that cycle? It's just knowing well in advance of an opportunity or an obstacle who I am, because now I know what I'm going to say yes to and no to.
Yeah, I love, what the statements that we make is establishing, or my purpose statement, right? It's a purpose statement of kind of authentic growth blueprint is this helping people to establish authentic identity, purpose, and community from the inside out. The inside out, right? So doing the inner work first. And when you start from that place, it then helps you to choose all the right, external things. It helps you to choose the right relationships, the right work to do, the things. But we often live, right, or taught in a way that, and I get this starts from childhood, right, but that we start from the outside in. Is it going to make this person happy? Is it going to help me to land this relationship? Is it going to produce more income? But that can get us off. I've had a number of clients that I've worked with, who, even the clients that they take on, right, sometimes big clients that pay them a lot of money, but if they were to run it through their three filters, right, their values, intrinsic motivation, and is it a great use of my strengths, it's a clear no, right?
Yeah.
Now they're getting paid a lot, but this person also is depleting them, right? It is arduous, unpleasant, dissatisfying work. And so, and I get the fear of, letting that go, of saying, well, if I let that go, then what am I going to do? There's this big income gap. But the people that have, taken that leap and realized I'm not being true to myself when I'm working with this person. So when they've cut those clients, right, and I'm not telling anyone to just go out there and start cutting clients, but the people that have done it, and I've got multiple instances, I can think of 4 right off the top of my head, where they replace those clients in a very, very short period of time, and they replace them with people who are an authentic fit, right, who are a great fit. So they were applying that decision making, right, being strategic in how they were choosing clients. And not only did they replace that income, but their income went up substantially very shortly after that. So, and it's amazing, right? And they were happier, they had more energy, they got back to the passion of like, doing work and why they did that job or created that business in the first place.
Sure.
So it's amazing, right? It's amazing how often we make decisions that strategically are bad for us, right? Like they just really are self-defeating, or we are making decisions that intentionally like make us smaller, shrink, right? That are in some way minimizing who we are.
And it kind of makes sense, right? If you don't get out, children, when you're growing up, you're constantly looking around at the adults and the bigger people. You're designed to kind of be raised by them, right? So you're getting their approval, you're finding out what works, what doesn't, all that kind of stuff.
So true.
But if you don't grow up and mature into that, that next level, hey, this is how I'm an adult now, I'm unique, and you don't get into that next level. You never get out of that cycle. You're constantly then looking for, people's approval around you. And it's absolutely exhausting and suffocating. And I think that I think we would be surprised too at how many people, if they really took a pause, right, got a little quiet, started thinking, and started asking those questions, at what percentage am I really living a life that seems intrinsic to me? And even if you don't know the vocabulary, you can sense your energy, right? You can sense am I exhausted all the time? Am I just spent and angry and, flooded with cortisol? Am I just, you know what I mean? It's like, am I just reacting to everything around me and just feel like I'm in a hamster in a wheel? If you feel like that, boy, it's time to start asking some of those questions, because I guarantee you, if your goal, and I'll give everybody the benefit of the doubt, if your goal is to really be a great mom, a great dad, a great business owner, all that kind of stuff, and I'm assuming that it is, right? We want that. If that's the goal, well, guess what? If you decide to tap into exactly who you are, all those things that were authored in you, the authentic place in you, and you start operating from that space, I guarantee you that your energy is gonna rise, and you're gonna be able to love those people and serve those people around you vastly more than what you're doing right now. It seems kind of counterintuitive, like you're gonna be saying, "Oh, I'm gonna shut everything out here." Nope. I think you're just gonna start saying yes to some things that really light you up, and those people are gonna end up thanking you for just being. Hey, I've got it right behind me here. Fully alive, right? I love this board behind me. I wrote down my number one core value is inspiration, period. I just, if it's not inspiring to me, I don't want to do it. I don't want to be about it. I don't want to look at it. So I wrote down words behind me that absolutely are bedrock to the person that I am and the person I desire to be on any given day. And ultimately, it's the man, who's fully alive. And if I look at somebody else, I want them to be fully alive and,
Yeah.
the way that they want to be. But this decision-making topic, Andy, to me is just, it almost gives me goosebumps as I'm thinking about it, because it's everything. But you've got to do the pre-work, the inner size, in order to start making decisions that are, just better, not bigger, just better, more peaceful,
Yeah.
more beautiful, more courageous, all that stuff.
Our decisions really do it. They reflect what we believe about ourselves, right? They reflect who we believe we are. And so, it's as simple as, if we think of, people who think they're lucky,
Yeah.
they make decisions that reflect that belief, right? They take more chances. They believe, right? We know, I mean, there's research on it. People who believe that good things are going to happen, right? They make decisions that reflect that. People who think that things aren't going to work out. I was talking to someone the other day who is in a relationship, and they're recognizing this pattern, right? Where they believe that people are going to reject them. And so they push them away, right? While at the very time they're wanting that person to come closer. And
Yeah.
so they're recognizing, well, I'm actually confirming my belief because I pushed the person so far away,
Yeah.
that now they have rejected me. And I'm like, see, I knew this was going to happen, but they're catching themselves in the process of doing it. Right. And we do this in business, right? We limit ourselves. If we don't believe ourselves to, be great at what we do, we don't believe our impact, then we self-destruct, right? Our decision makings reflect what we truly believe about ourselves. And
Oh,
so, and I
chilling.
love, yeah.
Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes is the Viktor Frankl quote, that between your stimulus, what happens to us in our response, there's a space. And in that space is where our capacity for growth and freedom exists. And in those moments where we get challenged by our wife, right? In those moments where we've got difficult decisions for our business, do I make this investment, right? Do I choose to work with this client?
Yeah.
So the more that we have done the inner work, the inner size, it allows us then to pivot, right? In those moments, to maximize that space, to acknowledge the fear, to acknowledge the risk, to acknowledge my feelings, but then lean towards, right, the person that I know myself to be, the person I want to be.
Yeah.
And the impact of that, right, in a day-to-day decision-making process, you might make a decision that's out of alignment. You think, well, that's no big deal, I can always change course. But if you don't change course, right, being even 1 to 2 degrees off course, right, just being a little bit over a long enough period of time, is how all of a sudden you end up in a marriage that's on the brink of collapse. It's how you end up in a business, right, that suddenly needs to shut down.
Yeah.
It's how you end up in a personal health crisis, right? And so, it's so critical to do the inner work first. And I don't think this is the way that a lot of times it's taught in how to become a decision maker, at least certainly not having 3 specific filters.
Yeah.
I promise you, if you do the work to figure out these 3 filters, and then you apply your decisions through this, you will become the supremely confident decision maker that this title said. So I don't know, what do you have to say as far as kind of just wrapping it up and closing this out?
So you use the word pivot. And I think quite often, people would hear a conversation like this, and they may just be thinking, oh man, I'm so far gone, or she is, or, this situation, or whatever that is. And what I think is fascinating is sometimes we're actually acting in alignment with, our truest nature, but we have not assigned meaning to it. We have not just put a label on it. So we're like, oh, that is, I have found it here. And so there's this uncertainty, and the human brain does not like that uncertainty. But then on a basic level too, I think that quite often it's just a pivot, right? It's not just scrapping my whole life and heading the other way. It's, wait a second, I'm going to bring some awareness, bring some, learn some more things. And it's just a pivot, so that a week from now, a month from now, like you said, it's like the jet, or the bullet. I mean, it's 2 degrees here, but, it's no big deal. But 100 yards down, it's, you're off the plate.
Yeah.
And so I think, but the same is true then for just course correcting and getting back to true north for you. So I love that word pivot. I think it takes away some of the anxiety, like I've got to become a different person. No, you just gotta laser in on a few things, and just open your heart and start running, because then it just gets better and easier and better and easier, and that virtuous loop just feeds itself, and it feels darn good.
Yeah, so well said, and so appreciate this conversation. And if anybody who's listening to this, right, I think a really common thing, I catch myself in, right, as well. If you believe that what is stopping you from making confident decisions, or the reason why you're not making, the decisions that you want to, it's because of somebody else, right? Well, it's because this person is constantly on my back and they're always judging me, right? Or my circumstance. You understand, I'm just unlucky. You got to believe that that's an identity too, right? You've internalized.
Yeah.
And the moment that you start to take the power back, right? You start to say, hold on, let me start from an internal standard, right? Let me figure out what I can control, and how do I start to move towards outcomes, towards being the person. Like you said, you will start to feel that aliveness. You will start to feel the sense of motivation, and it creates an upward loop where it just kind of starts, growing and expanding, and it's going to become intoxicating, right? I think we talked about it last time. This elevating, intoxicating, amplifying kind of result, and the compound effect of making great decisions in your business, your marriage, your personal health, right, just suddenly starts to build. And over the course of a year, all of a sudden your business is further along than you ever would have thought possible, right? Your marriage is increasingly getting better and better by the year. Right? Your personal health, at the age of 42, right, I'm getting in some of the best shape of my life. So
that's awesome. That's great. Yeah, I would just invite anybody, of course, who's listening, reach out to us. We obviously have a protocol, a course to go through, that Dr. Andy has put together that's been life-changing for me and so many people. So reach out to us. We'd love to, walk with you and to help you align with the truest things about you, right? I'm not going to tell you what to think, who to be, all that kind of stuff. You're going to find out what that is. And
you got the answers in you, right? You've got everything you need inside of you right now. The protocol that I put together, right, that people are applying right now, it's just a matter of having the right set of tools and the right questions to unlock that. And I promise you, it's so much closer than you realize, right? This transformation, this turnaround, that suddenly making decisions that start leading you to completely new outcomes. Yeah. It is so much quicker. It's so much closer than you could possibly realize.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thanks for having me on today here as usual. And what a great way to end a Friday here.
Yeah. Likewise, brother. Awesome conversation. I know I feel ready to make some great decisions, let's say, this weekend. So I hope everyone has an awesome weekend, living true to themselves, doing everything they can to close those two bubbles, that who you are and what you do, right, are aligned. It's going to feel great when you do that. So take care.
Awesome.